Hi, I'm Martin Jarvis, and I have the task of convincing you to buy something that you don't know that you need. Now, that's the no-no in marketing and in sales, you actually are supposed to approach folks with what you know they want and try to sell that to them. That's the way it normally works. But Henry Ford once said that if I had given the people what they wanted, I would have just created a faster horse. Okay, so we know, thanks to Henry Ford, it was good that he didn't listen to the desires of the people, because he knew, or he thought he knew, what they really needed. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. I have some books. I've written some books. And so I want to share those books with you today. And I want to tell you right up front, my job is to convince you to buy something that you don't know you need. Because we do audiobooks. Audiobooks are the thing. I mean, I've listened to probably 600 audiobooks, maybe a little bit more, over the years, over maybe 15 or so years. So I understand the power of audiobooks and the comfort and the convenience of audiobooks. But when you find a book that has a depth to it, that every chapter will give you something thick, something that you need for your life, it's good to have those type books sitting around. I mean, if it's of worth. So sort of like the Bible. And I know I have the Bible on audio, and so don't get me wrong, I've studied like the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran and so many philosophy books and history books, and science, and anything you could think of. I've studied. I have those audiobooks. Okay, but when you have something thick, like a philosophy book or a Bible or something that you could get encouragement or something, a motivation out of, you want to have those sitting around. Because sometimes, in life, when we go through things, when we have serious issues that we're facing, we really don't feel like going, let me find an audiobook that has to do with this. We just might feel like just sitting down and just chilling out. And maybe that book is sitting there on our desk or on our coffee table, by the couch or whatever. And we just pick it up and read something. I know for me, years ago, I had such a destructive lifestyle. I was doing every kind of thing. Joined the military when I was 17 years old and just went buck wild, And with the drinking and the smoking and the buzz and just the destructive lifestyle. And then one night I couldn't sleep. And rather than get that buzz, I just thought I'd open up this Bible that I had in my library, a Bible, and I was an atheist at the time, but I had a Bible sitting next to Plato's Republic, that Lao Tzu, The Importance of Living by Lin Yutang. It was just one of my philosophy books, and I figured almost for a joke, I'd just take this Bible, just open it up and start reading, and it put me to sleep. Okay, I was raised in church. I knew it would just put me to sleep. It was almost like a joke that I chose to do that rather than get that buzz as I ordinarily would do. And I opened that, and this isn't a religious pitch. I'm just sharing you the importance of having a book laying around. So I just grabbed this book and I just opened it anywhere. Because I knew this Bible. I was raised in Sunday school and all the way up until I went in the military at age 17. So I just opened it up anywhere and just started reading. And I was an atheist, mind you. But all of a sudden, within like 40 seconds, I just knew there was God. An intelligent designer. The source of creation, of our existence, all that stuff. However you want to paint it. But I had been an atheist. But I just grabbed the book. And so I'm just suggesting if that book hadn't been, the key is, I decided to change my life that night. I began reflecting on my life and the destructive nature of it. I was 28 then. I had left home at 17 and was an atheist not long. And I had just adopted all kinds of habits that just were not good, but I didn't realize they were not good, but I just wanted to change. And I got up in the morning and I went through my apartment. And I began to pick out everything that I loved, everything in my apartment that I figured had defined me, okay? So I had trophies, baseball, bowling, and karate trophies. I had artifacts I had picked up in Japan and Korea. I had a jazz album collection. I had plants. I was growing my own. I had all these things in my apartment that I loved. I picked them all out and took them all to the dumpster that day. Because I identify with those things anymore. Those things I had identified with, and I believe that environment had encouraged me to continue in that particular direction. I was 28 then. I'll be 68 this year in 2026. And I've lived a life without the addictions, without the drugs, without the alcohol, without the debauchery, without the destructive lifestyle, all this time. You know, I have kids now, you know, grown kids, and they don't know Marty. They only know Martin. Some of y'all can identify with that, okay? But anyway, over the course of my life, you know, I've learned some things, and so I've written books. I went to school. I was a guy with just a high school diploma. 50 years old, I decided to go to night school while I was working. 10 years later, I had earned my associate degree, my bachelor degree, and my MBA. And I decided to start writing some books. Now, that was back in 2019 when I graduated with that MBA. And I've written quite a few books then, and some of those I want to pitch to you right now because I think they're important. Again, they're important to have laying around. If I hadn't had that Bible in my library, you know, if I said, let me go get an audiobook of the Bible and see if it'll put me to sleep and just hit First Kings or something, you know, it wouldn't have had the impact. The impact was that it was laying there. Well, it was up in my library, and I just grabbed it. It was available. I just opened it anywhere and just started reading. And it changed my life. So don't get me wrong, I'm not dissing audiobooks because I use them because they're very convenient. But when you're looking at life change, when you're thinking about something and say, let me go back and look at that, I know that's in that book, or maybe that's in the book, I don't know. You need that book handy. And so that's what we're pitching today. So I guess we'll start off with, I have about 6 books here that I want to share with you today. And they're on Amazon. But I'm just pitching these books because I was going to change them into audiobooks. And I started with one of them, and it was like, because this is a process. You know, why am I doing this? I have a library full of books. All of my books are in my library. Okay, so I grabbed these 6 that I want to share with you right now. And the first one here is Growing Old. Growing Older Without Growing Old. And that's where everything that I've learned throughout my life. Again, I'm going to be 68 this year. And I'm really not functioning as a 68-year-old person. As a traditional 68-year-old person, what I'm trying to do is redefine what 68 years old is. I'm not trying to be young. I'm just suggesting that we buy into old age too quickly, okay? And so in the mornings, I have a 40-minute cardio. It's a martial art cardio. I used to be a martial artist when I was younger. It consists of 900 kicks and 1,000 punches in 40 minutes. And it kind of spreads them out up and down, so you don't kill yourself, but you're exhausted and you're sweating, and it's a good cardio. I've been doing this for like about 20 years or so. Eating healthy every day. Certain ways to change your life, change your outlook, how you look at yourself. Keep yourself looking good. Now, you look at my beard and you're saying, what am I talking about? Well, I don't want to jump the gun, but sometimes we go on journeys, okay? I believe, I don't know if the term reinventing yourself is really appropriate for this, but just to find what it is for the next phase of your life. Never just settle. I think one of the biggest problems that we have in our lives is that we have our parents and our grandparents that we've looked back at, and we just recognize, when I hit that age, that's what I'm supposed to look like. When I hit that age, that's how I'm supposed to be feeling and all that stuff. And no, that's not true. But see, oftentimes we don't redefine ourselves. We don't figure out what the next stage is going to be. And so we just naturally, I believe subconsciously, buy into what we know. That's what daddy looked like. That's what mama looked like. That's what grandma looked like, or whatever. No, redefine yourself. So what I do is, you know, it's like I redefine myself. When I turned 65, okay, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I don't know, but I need to do something. Something is going to be different in my life. So I decided, okay, I need to go on a journey. Like the old monks would go out into the forest or go out into the desert to determine what the next phase is going to be or what I'm supposed to do. Well, you know, having a job and a family and all, I can't realistically go out into the desert, you know, for 30 days or a month or 6 months or a year or so. So what I do symbolically is I grow this beard. And I've been doing this for like years at certain points in my life when I wanted to find out what the next direction was going to be. This is my journey. And so I don't shave until I get there. And it's like, this is like the reminder. I know I'm not shaving because I need this understanding. I need that. So every day when I look at myself in the mirror, I'm like, yeah, looking kind of ready. But this is the purpose. This is the next phase of my life. What is it I'm going to be doing? What is it I'm going to be doing? And then once I come up with what I'm supposed to be doing, then I shave. And I've done this maybe about 5 or 6 times throughout my life. And so at 65, I decided, well, I'm just not, and that's in November of like 2 years ago. I'm not going to shave until I know what I'm going to do next. Okay. So I'm just going along, and I hear my wife in the other room, and I'm 67 now, so I'm at 65. This is in February, so this is just a couple months later, and I heard her, she said something about using ChatGPT, and she has a preschool, and when she wants to communicate with her employees, she records an email and then has ChatGPT rewrite it. I'm like, ChatGPT? I had heard of it like most folks, but I really wasn't sure, what it was about. When she explained it to me, man, a light bulb went off. I've been writing books since 2019. And one of the tedious aspects of writing a book is getting someone to proofread it. So my little sister, she's a PhD, and of course I'm big brother, so she's helping me out. So I would send her my manuscript, and then she would look at it and then put all these little red marks, just like a teacher does, and send it back to me. You sure you want to say this, or maybe this shouldn't be here? She'd give all these pointers, and I'm like in my mind thinking, why don't you just change it for me? But that process for one book would be like 3 weeks of back and forth, and it was so frustrating. And I know it was frustrating for me, but it was probably more frustrating for her because, she just wanted to help me, but gosh, I can almost imagine what it'd be on her side. You got other things to do, right? So I had written like about 7 books or so, like that. And when my wife told me what ChatGPT was about, I said, well, shoot, I could take these books that I've written or write some more books, and then just, instead of using my sister, just use ChatGPT, okay? And so it was like a 3-week process with my little sister. Man, so I put a manuscript in, and I had to get the $20 version of ChatGPT, $20 a month. And I just put the whole manuscript in there. I don't know how many pages it was. It was a lot of pages, maybe 20 pages or something like that. And I said, proofread it and make all the grammatical corrections necessary, which is really what I wanted my sister to do, but I really couldn't tell her that, right? And man, in about 8 seconds or less, it just prints out my whole manuscript with all the right grammatical corrections, the punctuation, paragraphs, all that stuff. And I was amazed. And so this is my process. I have no problem writing books. What I do is I'll sit back and with a big notebook with certain topics on my mind, and sometimes I'll make bullet topics, and those will be the chapters. And I'll just start writing everything that I can think. And sometimes it's like too much because my mind is going faster than my handwriting. So I'm just writing fast, page after page. I have like 20 or 30 pages of handwritten notes. And even the problem with that is that sometimes, and then I have to go back and type those notes, onto Word, into a Word document. But the problem, even with that process, and it was the problem I had back then with my sister as well, is that my mind is going so fast and I'm trying to write and keep up. My handwriting is sloppy, and I go back sometimes as I'm typing this stuff into the Word document, I can't even read my own handwriting, and I don't even know what I said. So that's the problem. So what I found then with ChatGPT, so that's just what I've done. Okay, I did that for when I had that idea, that was February. Since I had that idea, the next morning I got up and I shaved. Okay, so that's the process. Okay, and so the point is, that was what I was looking for, something. I just didn't know what it was. And so the beard, every day I look at the beard, you look at the beard, and it's like, okay, this is what the next phase is going to be. And it comes to the point where you're in the mirror every day anyway, in the mornings and all. You're not even thinking about it consciously, but your subconscious is buying into it. I'm on this journey of discovery. I'm on this journey. And what I'm suggesting is as I went through that whole story, the point was, is that you have to create the environment that your subconscious is going to look at. Okay? okay? And that's just one small part of this book, but I'm just trying to give you an understanding of how it is we have to redefine ourselves. And this whole book is just growing older without growing old, and it's just all the stuff I understand, all the stuff I've learned over my life, and there's a lot of stuff. Well, it's kind of a thin book. It's not that much stuff. It's a lot of stuff, okay? And Growing Older Without Growing Old. It's on Amazon. Next book. This is a really cool cover, okay? And this is called Strategic Peace Within Flawed Systems. Now, this book is very important. It's important to me because we look at our nation, and you can attribute this to the entire world, but for whatever nation you're living in, and recognize there are issues. Whenever you're dealing with human beings, we have issues. Look at this cover again. Pretty cool, huh? I play chess pieces. And so you have folks that are on top, and you have folks that are not on top. And a lot of times, not being on top, you're in an oppressive environment. And so what I'm sharing with you today is how to remove yourself from that oppressive environment. Okay? It's recognizing there are people that are functioning as superior. There are people functioning as the inferior. People being viewed as inferior. People being viewed as superior. We need to recognize intrinsically of human beings, no one is inferior or superior. But that's simply the cultures that we live in worldwide, whatever nation we're living in. So what I'm suggesting is, how do you deal with a situation like that? Because my observation is that when you're functioning in a negativity, it's not going to fare well for you. You might have the appearance of success, but there's going to be negative impact on your own life as the superior person and as the inferior person. So I'm trying to get both folks to realize you as an inferior, seemingly inferior person, don't want to view that person as being superior, because that's what's holding you down. This person isn't holding you down. Your mindset of your reality, of your existence, is what's holding you down. And the oppressive person as well, you're not going to really prosper. You need to recognize that what goes around does come around. And it's not healthy to see yourself in a way that you not really are, okay? And so this is about how to make lemonade out of lemons or something, right? If it's not right, you can fix it and you can be successful. Come on. And I guess that's a good segue into this next book. To Be Black in America and Not Die. This guy right here on the front, that's my son, Martin Jr. He runs those Reebok challenges. He's like, working out, doing all that stuff. I don't do that stuff. But to be black in America and not die. This right here is a great history lesson of black folks in America. Because we have, I'm black in America, and I'll be 68 years old. I came up in the 70s as a young person, as a teenager, as a man, as a military person. And what I've seen is the idea of coming into this nation as a black person, there's a lot of negativity, that hangs in the balance. What I'm suggesting is 100 years ago, 200 years ago, it really wasn't the black person's fault, okay? But now we're in a situation today where we're carrying this baggage, this mental baggage, and oftentimes our lack of success isn't because of the oppressor. It's because of that environment that has given us a particular view of ourselves that's not quite healthy. And so that's what I'm sharing here. So it's a very good history lesson, so we don't have any misunderstanding about history. I'm a student of history. I love history. Okay, I remember my daughter came home from the second grade. She's a junior in college now, on her way to law school. But she came home in the second grade, and I always had her in private school. And she was saying, "Dad, there are no Native Americans anymore, no Indians." And I'm like, "What?" That's what they taught us in school. And I was like, "Come on, honey, let's go to the computer." And I was showing her the reservations and the dismal situation of Native Americans in this land. And then I guess the door was open. And I came up in the 70s at the heels of the Black Panther and the Black Power movement, So I'm like, she understood the second grade who Stokely Carmichael was, who Huey Newton was, Eldridge Cleaver, Kathleen Cleaver, Bobby Seale, all those folks, If I'm going to have you in private schools where there are not too many black folks, you're going to know, So the good history of black people, and to recognize that we direct our own course, okay? It doesn't matter how folks think about you or what folks think about you. It's up to you how successful you're going to be, okay? And what I've done in my life, what I've tried to I've demonstrated You know, I'm at this age. I'm 68 years old almost, and I'm pretty healthy for my age. I have an MBA. Admittedly, I didn't get it till I was 60, but I got it nonetheless. If I can do it at 60, you can do it at 50. You can do it at 40, at 30, at 25. Okay, that's the point. The health that I'm in today. If I can do it, you can do it. So everything that I put my hand to do, I have investment properties. I have investments. A lot of stuff. I could have just sat back and said, oh, well, the society's not fair, and just gone like that and just never been okay. But don't be that way. So I'm sharing with you in this book, to be black in America and not die, is that to be black in America is not dismal. And I think this is a good book for all black people, but for all people, white people as well, because we often have a skewed insight as far as history. And if you have a skewed insight on history, your present is built on a false foundation. Man, we had a Spanish girl that came to stay with us about 3 years ago, and my daughter was a senior in high school, and she was a senior in Spain, and she wanted to do her senior year here in the States, and she was a white Spanish girl, and she came here, and the first thing she was telling me how sorry she was about the condition of black people in America. I'm like, we're living in a 5,000 square foot house in a nice neighborhood, 5-car. We have it going on like that, and you're telling me you're feeling sorry for me? And she wanted to understand about black people in America. And so I got to share with her stuff. Okay? And the reality. And so the reality is that white folks, most white folks, and most black folks, and most everybody else folks in this nation don't really have a clue about the real history of black people in America, because if we did, we wouldn't be oppressive, and if we did, we wouldn't feel inferior. And we would simply be progressing and producing and be successful in life, in every aspect of life. So to be black in America and not die, good book to buy. What's next? Okay, Dear Karis, Letters from a Father's Heart. I have a daughter. Oh man, I have sons too, but I have a daughter. And there's a special bond between a father and a daughter. Okay, and I know a lot of children, a lot of girls didn't have that connection with their dads. Okay. But my daughter did, okay, 100%. I always say, the last children born get the benefit from the mistakes that the parents made on the children before them. But my daughter is really a recipient of that. And so I was with her like 24/7. I was always there. My wife was lucky when my daughter was born, because, a lot of times women have to get up when the baby's crying and do this and do that. No, man, if I heard a sound, 2 in the morning, don't worry, honey, I got this. I was always jumping. I was always there. Always there. And so then my daughter entered like a preschool and then to kindergarten, and all through. Man, I drove her all throughout her life. Every day. All the way up until I bought her a car in the 11th grade. And so we didn't just drive in the car and listen to music. No, we might have music in the background. But we had conversations. I love that. I love talking. I mean, it's like you got your child here, and they're just like there, ready for you to fill them with whatever it is they need. So you make sure that you just give them everything that you have. So we had conversations from preschool, from Barney, I love you, that whole thing, all the way up into the boys and every aspect of life. Okay, and so we had that kind of connection. And it's amazing when you have that. I remember when she was in about the 8th or 9th grade, I was talking about boys, and I always talked about everything, and even when the boy part came up, age appropriate for years, I was telling her about boys, about boys, how, you got to be careful because the boys will love you, think they love you, and then I was telling her about the next thing, And the next thing there's always the next thing. So you got a little boy, he likes you, he wants to just sit next to you, right? But then the next thing is, you might want to hold your hand. Then the next thing is, he might want to put his arm around you. Next thing is, he might want to kiss your neck. Next thing, he might want to kiss your face. Next thing, well, you know where next things go, right? But then what's the next thing after that? The next thing is somebody else, okay? And so I was sharing with her, sometimes boys will really believe they're in love, and men too, as a matter of fact. But once they accomplish that goal, the reality hits in. So it's not like they were setting out, now sometimes they do, but setting out to victimize. But sometimes they just do because they didn't realize they don't really love. And so that was a deep one that day. And my daughter looks at me and she says, Dad, were you like that? Jeez. So right there I felt like I was a man standing before two roads, Now do I tell my daughter the truth? or do I maintain hero status in her eyes? And I knew that she was more important than my ego. So I said, yes, your dad was like that. And guess what? I got to maintain my hero status. Because I think when she asked me that question, it was like validating whether or not I even knew what I was talking about. And so when I admitted that to her, she was okay with it. So letters from a father's heart. What this is, when my daughter went off to college, man, in another state, man, as a freshman, man, it was hard. So my wife and I, we were up there like 4 or 5 times that first year, that freshman year, you know, orientation, then parents' night or something, and then homecoming, and there was something else. But what I would do is out at the hotel, the day before we'd leave to come back home, to leave her there, I would be in the lobby of the hotel with a big cup of coffee, and I would just hand write a letter to her. And usually they're like 5 or 6 pages long. How proud I am of you and how I saw this in you, and, you know, all the affirmations that a dad would have for a daughter that he talked to every day, you know, from her school years. And I gave them to her, and then I left, you know, and came back home. And what I found out later, I think it was around her sophomore year, was that every time all her letters were stuck to the wall. They were that important to her. I didn't even realize it. And so what I want to share with you is this right here, Dear Kara's Letters from a Father's Heart. These are letters, not the letters that I actually wrote to my daughter, but letters that I would have written to her. Okay, so it's a book full of those letters. So this is a book, I feel like it's for little girls who didn't have that relationship from their dads. They didn't get that affirmation. There is affirmation in these letters. From dads that weren't able to affirm their daughters, you know. This will give you like something, maybe the board, you know, the diving board, the bouncing board, to start off and get it together and write some letters. Communicate with your daughter. Use these letters, you know, as a guide. You know, quickly I want to share, you know, I've been a motivational speaker to young people for a lot of years. I spent 17 years going into juvenile detention every week for 17 years. I missed 4 weeks in 17 years. And my wife, with her little preschool and all, was a daycare as well for kids, like after school up until about the 9th grade. When they get off to school, if they got to wait till they go home to their parents' house, they would be there. And my wife wanted me to come down and talk to the girls. These are like inner city kids. She wanted me to come down there and talk to the girls. I love talking. I guess you could tell that, right? So I came down there, and I had to come up with something quick. It was just that day I got that call. And so I wrote this letter, and it was called Dear Karis, my daughter. And it was all these things that, you know, if I was to pass away, these are all the things I want you to remember. I want you to know that you can hold on to or grasp onto. Because at the time, my daughter was about that age, 8th grade, 9th grade, something like that. And so these little kids were sitting there. There was like Maya. There was all these little girls in there. There's about 10 girls in there. And I went one by one. So I read the letter, Dear Karis, and I read the letter. And then, what's your name? Maya. Then I read the letter again, Dear Maya, and I read the letter to her. And then I read the letter to each child. And it was very deep, very heavy, very touching. And so what I'm sharing with you is Dear Karis, Letters from a Father's Heart. Have that effect on you. Now, so if I was going to do Dear Karis, I'd have to do Dear Martin Jr., my son. He's like 37 years old, college graduate, living in another state right now, doing his thing. But it's the same type thing. It's letters from a father's heart, man to man. For you young men out there, boys out there, men, older men that didn't have that connection with your dad, this is the connection. This is the affirmation. You are okay. You need affirmation. This is your affirmation. As far as dads who didn't have that connection with their sons, read this book. Look at these letters. And let this be the catalyst to get you to do something for your kids. I don't believe it's ever too late, you know. And it's just the longer we wait, the more difficult it is. But this book will help you. Dear Martin Jr., Letters from a Father's Heart. We're almost there. This book is called Empty Riches. Why Success Feels Shallow and How to Change It. I can tell you this, that when I got out of the military, I didn't have much of anything. I was happy. I just didn't have much of anything. Back in those days, man, it was like late 79, 1980 or so. Man, I got out of the military. I was living in an apartment. I had like, for a little TV, I had like 2 bricks, 2 cinder blocks. a board, and my TV was on top of the board. I had a mattress for a bed, and not for a bed, a mattress for a couch, and then in one. I mean, I was living. It wasn't that large, but I was totally content. I mean, it's better than. I mean, not better than the military. I enjoyed the military, but I was used to inconvenience, turning inconvenience into convenience, right? And but when as I became more successful in life, and to the point where I'm very satisfied now, very comfortable, and you know, the friends that I have had along the way, they began to resemble the place in life that I was. Like my wife was a college graduate. See, I went to college at night school from age 50 to 60. I didn't have that college experience, you know, where right after high school, you go to college, you do the thing you're supposed to do. I don't think I would have made it. I was partying too much in those days. I think the military was the right place for me to be. It was the right structure and the right freedom at the same time. But my wife's friends, you know, my wife graduated from Miami University, her friends that married, and these are professionals. I don't even feel like even though I have a MBA and my some of my education is greater than some of theirs, I just still feel like the blue collar guy, you know, when I'm around them and all. But what I have noticed is that these people with a lot of money, their situations are as jacked or sometimes more jacked up than people that don't have anything. I've seen marriages fall apart. I've seen kids that are jacked up. I've seen dysfunction, you know, on every level that I've lived on, you know, throughout my life. And that's because there are issues that we have that we think money will solve everything. I know the Bible says money answereth all things. It might answereth all financial things, but it doesn't answer all the issues and things that we go through in life. So this is a book that will cure you, I believe. It's called Empty Riches, Why Success Feels Shallow and How to Change It. Okay. Now I have a book for fun. This is a book for fun. You know, I believe I'm a spiritual person. You know, I spent a lot of time in church. I was a staff pastor in a local church for about 20 years, you know. But I'm also a fan of science. I always have been from the time I was a kid. And so quantum physics is something that really interests me. That's why I deviated from the traditional path of religion, but I've deviated from the traditional path of science as well. Because they're both kind of like not wanting to take that extra step. The scientist isn't going to say God, and the religious person isn't going to say science, and so we're stuck, okay? So that's where I'm in the middle of all that, and I see that there's a connection. But this book here is called Beyond the Quantum Horizon, Dialogues of Existence. Now, there was a conference in Solvay in around 1920 or so with a bunch of physicists, Einstein, Niels Bohr, a bunch of other guys, okay? And they all met. And it was just a conference on physics and all. And what I did was I decided to take social issues that we're dealing with today and use quantum physics understanding to respond to the situations in our lives that we have today. Kind of difficult to explain. I sure wish I had my glasses on. But anyway, good book. Bye. Now, I have a book that I want to tell you about that I don't have with me because I gave it away. Actually, I gave it to my wife. She says she doesn't understand me sometimes, so I sit here and read this. It's called Reflections, okay? And it's a book that gives us to realize that whatever issues we have today, good or bad, but for really the bad ones that we really want to deal with, right? Because we don't have any issue with the good things about us. Is why are we doing these things? Why do we do self-destructive things? Why do I feel inferior? Why do I clam up when people come around? Why can't I be the person that I want to be? And what I want to suggest today is that everything that we are today, you can trace back in your life, okay? And most of our issues, many of our issues are from childhood, okay? And so what I've done is I've sort of taken each chapter as a piece of my life from the eyes of a child when I was a child, and how it affected me, you know, later in life. So I started off, I was born in Los Angeles, California, moved to Europe, lived there for like 4.5 to 5 years. Moved from there to Kansas, Junction City, Kansas, while my father was in Vietnam. Moved from there to Bangor, Maine, and moved from Maine to Ohio. I was a military kid, okay? And just, highlighting the situations of my life. One thing very interesting, when I think we came to Ohio, I was a young kid, and my father was an E9, which was the top enlisted rank, so he had a bunch of stripes on his arm. And he took me to my class. And looking back, I'm glad I was a military kid because of the experiences, the relationships, so many different types of people that you've just embraced because these are your friends. But one of the negatives, I think, was that wherever we'd moved, the military didn't wait until the school year was over. So we were always moving in the middle of the school year. And that means whenever I got to school, all the friends had already been made. Plus some of the necessary stuff, like in math, had already been passed, and I'm getting there late trying to catch up and figure what's going on. But I remember one time my father brought me to class, and they had him bring me to the actual classroom, and the teacher had us standing in front of the whole class introducing me, and I was like a shy kid. And all of a sudden I just panicked, and I just turned around and just started sharpening one of the pencils I had in my hand. And my father gently but firmly grabbed me by my shoulder and turned me around. And when he turned me around, the container of the pencil sharpener came off, hit the floor. All these pencil sharpener shavings went all over the place. That was my first day in school. That had some kind of effect. Everything has an effect. So this is a book of those type situations throughout my life, positive and negative, made me who I am today. And as you begin to examine those, and I have questions at the end of those, for whoever's reading, do you have experiences like this? Well, how do you think? And that kind of stuff, and it will help find healing. It's called Reflections. Okay. So these are all on Amazon, and I really believe it's necessary to have books like this sitting around, to where you might just be down one day, or you might come home, maybe the cable goes out because of the storm or something, and you're just sitting there. Well, let me just open this book that's sitting right here. You'll see something. I guarantee you, any page that you open in any of these books is going to reveal something about you, something about your lives, something that will bring wellness to your life. Even if you are well, it will be something beneficial for you. Well, anyway, I thank you for joining me, and take care.